Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So some interesting news coming out of the welterweight division, and it has the potential to be extremely positive. The WBO have ordered a fight between Terence Crawford, the champion, and mandatory challenger Shawn Porter. Both parties involved will have until the 20th of August to reach an agreement, and if they don't come to an agreement, this fight will go to purse bids. Hopefully they can sort this out before it gets to purse bids, to be honest. But if it does go to purse bids, that will be very interesting. Potentially you could have Terence Crawford fighting on the PBC against Shawn Porter. I would imagine if this does go to purse bids, Al Heyman will actually back Shawn Porter and try and get this fight on the PBC. So, you know, if it does go to purse bids, that could be very interesting. But ultimately, all I care about is that this fight actually happens. You know, Terence Crawford, I've got to tell you the truth, I've not been excited by a Terence Crawford opponent probably since Victor Postal, I would say, maybe Jeff Horn. It's been a long while since I've been excited for a potential Crawford fight. But if we were to get this fight next, I would be extremely happy. Extremely happy. Ultimately, it's the sort of fight Terence Crawford needs. To me, ever since Terence Crawford's been at welterweight, his career really has just stagnated. And on top of that, in my opinion, the guy's not been active enough. And ultimately, to tell you the truth, I've not been convinced that Terence Crawford really wants these big fights like he says he does. I think he's one of those guys who's become content with his situation. He's been getting paid extremely well to basically beat up on shot fighters like Amir Khan and Kell Brook, or C-level guys, B- guys, such as Jose Benavidez and Aegis Kavalauskas. I just think Terence Crawford's been far too content fighting this level of competition, and to me, if he was really about it and he really wanted these fights, the least he could do is stay active, even if that meant, you know, him not getting the fights he wanted, but at least he would be active and he would keep his name in the fans' minds. I mean, back in 2013, 2014, Gennady Golovkin did something similar. He was fighting like 3 times a year on HBO. Yeah, not against the greatest competition, but he kept his name in the fight fans' minds kind of thing and built his profile. But Terence Crawford really hasn't done that, and he's never convinced me that he truly, really wants these big fights at welterweight. He says he wants them, and maybe he does, but I just don't think he wants them enough, to tell you the truth. And to me, he desperately needs this sort of fight. Shawn Porter would, in my opinion, be the best name on his resume. Should he beat Shawn Porter, you know, it would be the best win of his career. Not just at welterweight, but in his career in general. How old is Terence Crawford now? 33, 34 years old? Time is running out. He needs to add these names to his resume. Another thing with, you know, the level of competition that Terence has been fighting, as a fighter, I believe some guys, when they fight at that level of competition for so long, plus on top of that they remain inactive, I believe it can stagnate fighters and they'll develop bad habits and not really be battle tested for when the big fight comes. So yeah, Terence needs to take these sort of fights now, because basically it's getting to that point where it's now or never for Terence Crawford. He can't afford to waste no more time, he's not getting any younger, and a win over Shawn Porter would do his career, in my opinion, the world of good, and especially if he were to actually make a statement against Shawn Porter. I mean, imagine if he goes in there, dominates Shawn Porter and stops him, becomes the first man to stop Shawn Porter. That would be a big look, and it would add demand from boxing fans to see Terence Crawford in there with the other elite welterweights, because right now it feels like everyone's forgot Terence Crawford. You know, I mean, even myself, I'm not thinking about Terence Crawford right now. You know, before this news, I could care less, if I'm being honest. You know, names like Jose Zepeda were being bandied around, and Josecito Lopez. I've just got no interest in those fights whatsoever. But Shawn Porter? That's a great fight to me. I think that's going to be a very hard fight for Terence Crawford. A fight in which Shawn Porter can ask questions of Terence Crawford, and at the end of it, we will find out a lot more about Terence Crawford at welterweight, because reality is, he's not had that sort of fight in the welterweight division. Ultimately, we know what Shawn Porter brings to the table. We know he's battle tested at welterweight. been fighting top guys since 2013, whenever he won the world title against Devin Alexander. He's fought some top guys: Kell Brook, Devin Alexander, Paulie Malignaggi, Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, which I felt he kind of won that fight, to be honest, Errol Spence Jr. We know exactly what Shawn Porter brings to the table, and we know he's a top 5 welterweight. We know he can handle himself at world level. We couldn't say that about Aegis Kavalauskas, or Jose Benavidez, or a shot Kell Brook, a shot Amir Khan. But Shawn Porter, we know what we're going to get. Can Terence Crawford handle that? Is he good enough? It's what I want to know, ultimately. I've been hearing for years in regards to how good Terence Crawford is. I think he's a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but I've never been as sold on him at welterweight as many people are, to tell you the truth. And to me, Shawn Porter is the sort of guy where I find out how good Terence Crawford is at welterweight. And all around, it's a great stylistic matchup as well. So, yeah, positive news in the welterweight division. Obviously, we can't count our chickens before they hatch. You know, this could go tits up. Who knows? It's boxing after all. But the fact that this fight has been ordered is a good sign, in my opinion. And fingers crossed it happens. If this fight does happen, I'll confess, it would be one of the fights I'm looking forward to most this year. I've been calling for this fight for a long, long time now. So, yeah, interesting news. Dare I say positive news. Fingers crossed this fight happens. That's all I can say, really. And, yeah, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Delboy. Peace.